Welcome. Thanks for being here. Lucky is actually. Do you remember that?
This is a story about a girl named Lucky.
I don't know who remembers that. Sorry. Lucky is actually one of several web frameworks written in Crystal, and it's the only one I know, so don't ask me about the other ones, please. Yeah, first, a bit of background. I don't like it when people talk too much about themselves, but I have to give a bit of background for this whole talk to make more sense. At least that's what I hope. So I'm currently a consultant. I worked with lots of Rails apps in the last years, wrote lots of them myself. And yeah, one common theme that I recognized over and over again is that people lack fundamentals. You have a mix of senior and junior developers, and not everybody can write perfect code. That's great, that's cool, people learn, but they still have to deliver features and to make their clients happy, and that leads them to write the code in the best way they know, and yeah, that makes sometimes code hard to maintain in the long term, leads to bugs, leads to not optimal code quality. And I will just go through a few common problems in Rails apps. Perhaps you've already seen like big controller classes where you have the common CRUD actions, and then you have another action and another action, and people name these actions in any way they think might make sense, but they are not RESTful, and you have like, I don't know, 200 lines of code for a controller, and that might be even small. The controller has too many responsibilities, has to do too much at once. You have long test cases for long controllers. So everything just cascades from there, and it's not fun to work with that. And I believe it's the wrong way to write these controllers, but that's another question or another talk. You also have, like, a few years ago, you saw these blog posts come up about how to use service objects, and everything should be a service object, but nobody knew what is a service object, how should I use it, and yeah, people just use it in any way they understand, and this might be different from what I think service object might be. You have design patterns that people don't use, and that might be something that Toby will contradict me, but I think people have too little knowledge on how to test code and what to test in their applications. And I think if you have 100% code coverage, then you're doing something wrong. You shouldn't have 100%. But we can discuss that later. Anyway, with all these stage set, now we have Lucky as a framework. Lucky was created about 2 years ago by a guy named Paul Smith from ThoughtBot in Boston. ThoughtBot is like a big consultancy agency. They did lots of Rails during the years. They have other projects as well, but he created Lucky because he also saw these problems that I just mentioned. I had a talk with him. I did an interview with him 2 nights ago. It was great, it was interesting. I wanted to show you, but I messed up the recording, so I couldn't show it to you because it has no sound.
Do we have a lip reader?
Sorry?
Do we have a lip reader here?
Yeah, I didn't ask. So I didn't yet do any bigger projects with Lucky. I had like 2 or 3 side projects, like things where I tried things out. For this talk specifically, I wrote a little to-do app that's way from finished. I have limited experience. I cannot answer all questions regarding Crystal or Lucky, but we can try if you want to. I just like the idea of Lucky because Lucky has your back, and I just wanted to have a nice picture of kids. I will just talk about what Lucky does for you and what consequences that might have. Lucky uses Crystal, and Crystal has a compiler. Just as Toby said, Crystal started out as compiled Ruby, so they left the compiler in there. And the compiler tells you about things you are doing wrong. What is specifically that might be, I will tell you about. But if you compile your code, you can write fewer tests. In my to-do app, I made several mistakes while developing and things didn't work, but I didn't have to write a test for that. I just followed the compiler. Where you do test-driven development, all these steps you would write a test for, the compiler did for me. That made sense to me, and it was fun to develop that way. Usually I do it test-driven, but this way I just wanted to try something different, and it worked, kind of. More about that later. You don't have long controller classes because you don't have any controllers. You have actions, and actions are small, focused classes. One action does one thing. And that is really cool. You will see an example like this. This is like the home page where you start when you enter, I don't know, localhost 3000 or 3001 I support, I believe. Then you come to the home index action. It inherits from browser action. You don't have to sign in for that. And when you get the root path, then you test for the current user. Everything you see will remind you of Rails, and that's intended. Yeah, and what happens if we are logged in, if we have a current user? Then you get redirected to the me show page or to the Lucky welcome page. When you start a new Lucky project, then you get all these things for free. Things like signing up, signing in, having these current user helpers in there. They're already there for you. You can just start to write your app and you don't have to take care of the authentication stuff. So no device there, for example. You have, because you have a compiler, you have type safety. You have type safe URL parameters, and that's another example here. That's another action. The user's index action would be the user's controller, def index, right? And you have the page param, and this is supposed to be an integer, int 32. With this param macro, you can use it in your page. It's provided for you. And the compiler will see that what kind of param is passed, or not the compiler. In that case, it's an exception that is thrown when you access the page with a different param than an int32. You could make it optional. If you like write a question mark behind the type, then you have an optional parameter. And if you would like call the page, the index page with the page param like a string, I don't know, unlucky is a nice example, then you get an exception, and which you could catch and inform the user or whatever you want to do with an exception. Perhaps you ignore it. You have type-safe database queries. Another example. So the first one works. This time we render a page. I will show you pages later on. And the page needs to-dos, and the to-dos are passed or are fetched like with the to-do query, where you want every to-do that belongs to a certain owner, identified by the owner ID. And because the owner ID is in the migration defined as an int32, you need to pass it an int. Strings are typecast to ints, so this second example would work also. And the last one, where you pass a float, doesn't work because the compiler doesn't typecast the float to the int. So can be helpful, I would say. All right, more code. As I said, I created the to-do app, and now I will show you the way how would I create like a new to-do in this application, and what actions, what pages, and what objects do we need for that. So we start with the to-do's new page. Sorry, with the action, actually. You see over here, route do. Because the action is a new action, Lucky knows, like it infers from the new word, that it will be a get action. So you don't have to write get. You don't have to think about HTTP verbs in Lucky. If you have a new action, the you just have a get action like that. You could also write get to-dos new, but you don't have to. So what happens when we get there? We render a page, exactly the to-dos, like in the namespace to-dos, the new page, and we pass it a form object, the to-do form, with the current user. Will make sense, I promise. I hope you can see it back there. I tried and I could, so he nods, thank you. He shakes his head. You could come to the front.
No, I shake his head.
All right, so we passed the form to the, actually I have this pointer thing. Yeah. So we say needs form of type to-do form, and that's the form that we passed into it. So if you know your page, your new page will have a form, then you should write needs form. So the compiler will check everywhere the page is rendered that you have actually provided a form object. The form object is needed to have a form there and to have the logic, what happens when you submit the form, etc. So you cannot forget to write a form there. And what I did when I created my app, I just said I have a new page, and I said I want to have a form, so needs form, and it will probably be a to-do form. And the compiler compiled and said, all right, the page needs a form. Where is the form? So that was my first test. So I created like the to-do form object and passed it in. And I have the next step that went green, like that, like a test. What happens? We have a content. That's where we render our content for the page. Nice headline. You don't actually write any classic HTML. You just write use these helpers, like content text in Rails. And yeah, they have all the helpers, all the HTML helpers you would need, I would say. And if not, you can set a pull request. After our, like below our headline, we have the render to-do form, and we pass the instance variable form. Okay, no battery. And then we create with our form4 helper, that is also known from Rails, I hope. So you have this helper, and you specify the action where the form, what should happen when we submit the form. We don't specify a path or path helper, we just tell like what action should happen. We want it to be created, so we pass the action to do create. Inside we have the diff with little bootstrap classes. We have 3 helpers for the title that we want the to-do to have. There's also like a helper that wraps all these 3 lines labeled text and errors into one statement. You have to write fewer things, but I wanted to be explicit here. And below we have the submit button. And now we submit our form, like we enter our title and we submit the form. And we come to, oh no, before that I want to show the to-do form, like that's the class for the form. And also again, we need, sorry?
Take the other one.
Doesn't. Oh, good idea. Yeah, cool. So we need a current user for the form, and we have a fillable title. If you omit that and don't make the title fillable, then the compiler will tell you you likely have a text field for the title that you want the user to be able to write into, and so it needs to be fillable. And then we have the prepare method that's just like the form is set up and the prepare hook is called. And the to-do isn't finished when we create it, like I haven't done it yet. So it's like gets the value false here. You could also create a hidden field in your form and pass it in there, but then the user could like change the HTML and make it, I don't know, make it true. It doesn't make sense for the user to create a to-do that's already done, but he could do it. But if you do it like that, then the finished attribute of the to-do is already false, and you set the owner ID to the current user. All right, so now we have the action where we actually created to-do. Again, we have the route. And creating something is a post action as an HTTP verb, but we don't have to write it. It's just inferred from the name of the action. So you don't have to, especially when you start out with all these stuff, how do you know what verb should you use? Should it be post? Should it be get? Should it be put, delete, whatever? You don't have to know that yet. You can just trust Lucky and learn it later on. All right, so now we have the to-do form that we create. We pass in the paragraphs. That's actually here the title. We prepared the current user. We have to do it again here. I don't really know why we have to do it twice, but it didn't work another way. So that's one of the questions I couldn't answer, sorry. Now we have the form object and we have the created to-do. And if that is really there, if it worked, if we have created our to-do, then we have a flash success message and we render an index page, which again needs to-do. And we have our query again, where we take all the queries belonging to the current user and display them. And if something goes wrong, the comment here shows how you would debug errors, because actually the thing where we had the finished value, I forgot that. But in migration, where I created the to-do model, I forgot, no, I didn't forget, but I specified the finished value as required. So it's not optional, it has to be there. So when you create a new to-do, you have to specify, you have to give a value for the finished. And I forgot that in the form. And I always got the computer says no message. And I didn't know what to do. So I debugged it, like show me all the form errors. And then I had in the console that finished is required. And then I put it in there. So that's like another test I had, which I didn't need to write because the compiler told me. And if it doesn't work, we just render again the new page with the form, the same one that we passed in. So we have still our content in there, like the title doesn't change. Next one is the index page. Like we follow the happy path. We created our to-do. Yay! So this is our index page. Again, it needs to-dos. You want to display something on this page of to-dos. You need a list. So you tell them, I need to-dos. And this is an array of, like with many to-dos in there, like an array of type to-do, or however you want to call that. And again, the content, that's how you specify what you want to display. I want to have an unordered list with all the to-dos from up here. Show me all the to-dos. Make a list entry, list item with just the to-do title, which means I never will finish my to-do list because I cannot check them right now. Yeah, it's work in progress, right? And below there we can create new to-dos, and that leads us back to the new page that I showed in the beginning. How I am on time.
7 minutes.
Then migrations. I'm almost finished. Yeah, migrations look a lot like migrations do in Rails. There you see the finished, it's Boolean, and it doesn't have a question mark, so it's required, and that bit me. And you can roll back migrations. That's the syntax in the terminal is different, but what is created or how you do it is very similar to Rails. So to get over there from Rails to Crystal isn't too hard. Right, so we created our migration and we forgot something. Did somebody spot it? We forgot the owner. Like a user has many to-dos. That's what's it called in Rails. And here you alter the to-dos table and you add the belongs to owner of type user. And when the owner is deleted, we want to cascade this deletion to all the to-dos. And you can also, with execute, just run custom SQL. Also like in Rails. I mentioned tests already. There are tests. You can write tests. These remind me of, like, I don't know, Cucumber or something like that, where you have feature specs. You just tell what is supposed to happen with this feature of reset password. And everything you see here these are just helper methods that are written somewhere else. So the compiler isn't that smart to know what you mean with that. You have to actually define the method. Sadly, that's not how it works. It would be great. But it just reads better this way if you don't have all these technicalities like find field of ID and fill in and so on and so forth. You shouldn't do that anyway. And Rails, Crystal, and especially Lucky tell you to do it that way with this example. I didn't write this code actually. This was created with the Lucky Framework app because the sign up and with a password flow, etc. is already created for you. Okay, that was very fast. We come to the summary. Again, I did not write tests, but I'm confident that the app works. I can log in, I can log out, I can create to-dos. It works. I already told some of you in talks before that. Well, we have had some pizza. It's delicious. I really believe that Lucky is good for beginners because you have these small classes, you have all these things that are taken care for you. You can just concentrate on creating something. And Rails is relatively, I believe, easy to learn. I'm not sure because it's too long for me that I used Rails. But I believe that with Lucky you can have even a softer start and just try things out. And I think it's fun to write. I really had fun write a simple, dumb to-do app. It was cool. So now everybody is excited. You want to join Lucky. You want to do something. How do you do that? So their website, luckyframework.org, they don't use Slack. They use Gitter IM. That's really not a nice experience to chat, but it works. Actually, the creator, Paul Smith, is on there every day. And you can send him private messages. He's totally accessible to everybody. And you can send all the beginner questions, all the simple questions, and nobody mocks you for it. Nobody writes something bad. Everybody just wants to help you. The community is very small still, but everybody is really, really friendly. So please go there and write Lucky, because as I said, I'm just about to finish. Yeah, I had this interview with Paul, and I asked him, what should I tell you? How could you help Lucky? Should you write pull requests? Should you go into the code and create features? You could do that, but you have so much to learn about the framework and how that works. And everything is still in, not in 1.0 version, but way before that, like in, I don't know, alpha or beta stadium. So there's lots of things changing all the time, internally at least. So what he wants you to do is try Lucky out and tell the world about your experience with Lucky. Tell the world it was bad, it sucked because you didn't get to write tests, or it was great because, I don't know, I could create a to-do app. Just do something like I'm doing right now. Tell the world how great Lucky is. Thank you.
We do have some time for questions. If there are any
I don't take
questions.
those.
No, you don't?
I do.
Okay.
I will try. Sorry, I will try.
What do you think how scalable it is? Things like having partials or something. I could imagine that putting all the HTML things into the action.
Into the page, yeah.
Might be this sort of blowing up the files. So how scalable is it for larger applications or more systems?
That's actually a good question. What I can tell you about that is you have layout classes, like application layout in Rails. You have a main layout and a guest layout that will be rendered according to if you are logged in or not. So you have all this wrapper there, and you can use partials. You can create, like Crystal has this modules as well. Like you can include modules into your class and use methods from there. So you would have to write your own like small helpers, like a module for, I don't know, for your header that you would want to reduce on certain partials or certain parts of a partial. you can use it. You can just write a method somewhere, include it where you need it. Sorry, and reuse code that way. But again, that would be something that you have in a bigger application. There is actually one big Lucky application right now out in the wild, and that's what Paul told me. And they use it in production, and it works really great for them. So he didn't want to tell me the name, but
It's there.
yeah, it is there.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
The app you presented, like, first of all, thank you. Always really cool to get insights into different things. My question would be, this seems very tied to like HTML output, like very tied, like mixing concerns to a degree where you can't separate it from another. With like looking at the Rails API node, for example, and we use a ton of this just because like our frontends are all attached. Is this like available with Lucky yet, or is the aim specifically to create like self-containing apps that provide all of the browser stuff?
All right. So the question was whether you could create APIs with Lucky in a nice way, like you can do with Rails. So when you look at the Lucky website, you actually see a small example how you would create a JSON, like an action with a JSON response for a JSON API. It isn't really fleshed out, so you have to create everything yourself and use your imagination. But you can create like JSON responses quite easily. And there are like when you use gems in Rails and Ruby, you use charts in Crystal, and there are charts for integrating React into your application. So you can have a React front end and just write a Crystal or Lucky backend. So that works.
One follow-up question, if I may, more aimed at like the development side. Type-safe URL parameters, isn't that dangerous?
Perhaps. Do you have an example?
Yeah, I pass you false, and it's a string. And I
haven't
actually
tried
want
that.
I mean, I don't know, like it's nice that like I get certain guarantees with the types, but I mean, it all depends on like the internal casting of strings to,
That's true.
and I don't know Crystal, like please, the Crystal pros correct me, like to something. I've been working with some good languages, JavaScript, where you can like cast stuff to other things that are not necessarily like
Yeah.
good
I
things.
believe that the casting from like strings to ints works, but I believe I read that you cannot like cast to a Boolean, but I actually haven't tried. So typecasting like a Boolean param, we should try that out. Perhaps we should write a test for it, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So good question, but I don't know the perfect answer, sorry. Cool. Anybody else? All right, thank you.